What's good, Elite Live Streams? We back with another one. How you guys doing out there? Salute to everyone who's been showing love. Thank you all so much for everyone who's been liking, sharing, subscribing, interacting with the movement. We appreciate you guys every single day coming out here, showing us love, making sure that we feel the love. I appreciate everybody who's been subscribing, man. The channel, like I said, every time we are growing. And it's much appreciated, man, because I know that you guys could listen and consume any other content, but you guys choose to come back and chill with me. And I appreciate that so much, guys, because it means a lot to me. I'm building everything from here brick by brick, and it's not easy, but we gonna make it happen every single time. So salute to everybody out there. Thank you all so much. We making it happen. So what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about the 40 acres and a mule, right? A lot of times, I think in the Black American space, and especially just kind of what we've been going through recently, I've been seeing a lot of disrespect about how Black Americans and what we are owed, and as well kind of the fact that we haven't done anything in 400 years and we have all this stuff. And so I wanted to do a deep dive exactly on the 40 acres and a mule that we were promised as Black Americans. I wanted to kind of do a deep dive on this, and I did a little research, and I saw a few, content creators in this space had talked about it a little bit last year, but we're going to bring it back to the forefront because I think it's definitely needs to be reminded, because right now is the perfect time for these type of stories to be able to, kind of have a resurgence, and then us having some commentary behind this and doing our part to make sure that we're continuing to raise awareness about the plight of Black Americans and foundational Black Americans and everything that we've been through in this, country, right? Our country, of course, you know what I'm saying? So I wanted to kind of start at least with just kind of some information. We'll read off the information, and then I'm going to hit you guys with a video from PBS, who had a really, really good report on what they call the broken promises, or the 40 acres and a lie, right? So first things first, right? First things first, let's start on the top, right? So 40 acres and a mule refers to the unfulfilled promises made by the U.S. government to provide land and resources to formerly enslaved Black Americans after the Civil War for economic independence, stemming from General Sherman's Special Field Order number 15 in 1865. But this promise was quickly overturned by President Andrew Johnson, becoming a lasting symbol of broken promises, systemic injustices, and the ongoing fight for Black reparations and economic equality, right? So as Black Americans, I think we've all kind of heard that, as we've grown up. We understood the 40 acres and a mule promise that a lot of us looked at, and we felt some type of way because we're like, wait, we were entitled 40 acres and we did not get those entitlements. Well, guess what? A lot of people actually did. There was a lot of paperwork, there was a lot of land grants, and there was actually people who were allocated land, and they literally got finessed out of it by Andrew Johnson and others, right, who are part of that establishment, right? We know the establishment, but we're going to make sure that we keep this at the forefront, that we're talking about this, that we're making sure that people are aware about what was going on, and as well the origins of this, right? So let's talk about the origins. The origin: Sherman's order in January 1865, General William T. Sherman met with Black leaders in Savannah, Georgia, leading to the Special Field Order number 15, which confiscated, Confederate land and set it aside plots of up to 40 acres for Black American families, with some receiving mules, right? So you got to think, at that time, the Confederacy had been, taken over and beaten, right, by the North, right? And we were a part of that as Black Americans, fighting in the Civil War, putting our bodies on the line, fighting for our freedom, right? And as well, the incentive was, you guys fight with us on the North, we will give you guys freedom, and as well, a promise of 40 acres of that land that we have taken over, right? And so a lot of Black Americans were full in support of that, looking for, the economic self-sufficiency that Black Americans are entitled to, right? So let's talk about it. Economic self-sufficiency. The goal was to provide a foundation for wealth building and autonomy for newly freed men, acknowledging the land they had worked, right? So we were the ones who were the cultivators, the farmers, the ones who built it. We were the ones who were the architects. We were the ones who were the construction workers. We were the ones who were building the railroads. We were the ones, okay? All this infrastructure, right? The White House, DC, all was built and designed by Black Americans, right? So when we're looking at that perspective, yes, right? The goal was to provide a foundation, right, for wealth building and autonomy for newly freed men, right? So that's who we are. We are the freedmen of the American Black slaves, right? So from that perspective, this was our, overall goal, right? And this was also owed to us because of the sacrifices that our ancestors made building this country, right? So that was something that I think a lot of Black Americans, as we get deeper into kind of studying our lineage, making sure that we are representing that, we have to make sure that we do our best to make sure that we let you guys understand why we're saying what we're saying and how we feel, right? That we are entitled to the land that our ancestors built and also cultivated that foundation, right? That we were supposed to be able to build wealth off of, right? And that's the biggest part, is the wealth building aspect of this, right? Is the fact that a lot of Black Americans who have made that ultimate sacrifice were looking and expecting to get something in return. And the fact that it didn't, it just goes to show just how much we just don't trust the government, right? Because the government is a part of that establishment that literally took the land out of our hands, took it away from us, right? So the presidential reversal. After the war, President Andrew Johnson revoked the order, returning most of the land to its former white owners. The reversal deprived Black American families of land, hindering them economic progress and contributing to the generational wealth disparities, right? So the land that we were entitled to was actually given back from President Andrew Johnson. This is after they had assassinated, right? They had assassinated Abraham Lincoln after this. And I think that's as well what plays into this too, is the fact that Abraham Lincoln had been, basically assassinated because he knew that he was going to be holding up that side of things, right? So let's talk about the legacy, right? Reparations, the phrase remains central to the discussion of reparations for slavery, symbolizing the deep economic impact of the broken promise. It represents the historical fight for land, economic justice, and the enduring efforts of Black American communities to preserve land and achieve equal equity, right? So that's the biggest component here, is the fact that Black Americans are entitled to this, right? It's our land, it's what we are, it's who we are, and we are entitled to that. And that's why I think a lot of us, when we looked at that 40 acres and a mule, we were thinking, hey, this is what we were entitled to. And the mule being something that is representative of what? Cattle. And cattle is just as good as money, right? So let's bring up the video here so we can start getting into that, right? Because this is a very, very good video. Here we go. PBS NewsHour, all right? And this one says, report reveals how formerly enslaved people were ousted from land received after the Civil War. Let's take a look, guys.
After the Civil War, the federal government's pledge of 40 acres and a mule to the formerly enslaved has long been known as a broken promise. But a new investigative report reveals that not only did the government grant land to hundreds of formerly enslaved people, it also took that land back and returned it to white Southerners. That 2-year reporting project done by the Center for Public Integrity, Reveal, and Mother Jones is now the largest collection of land titles from the 40 Acres program ever to be analyzed and published.
All right, so if you guys can see that, it says 40 acres and a lie. We compiled the Reconstruction era documents to identify 1,250 formerly enslaved Black Americans given land only to have it returned to their enslavers. Okay, so salute to Alexia Fernandez Campbell, April Simpson, and Pratik Rebella. All right, and this is from a 2024 report, guys.
I spoke recently with Alexia Fernandez Campbell, a senior investigative reporter at the Center for Public Integrity. Alexia, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
So take me back to the fall of 2021. You were working on an entirely different project unrelated to this. You're digging through the digital archives at the Smithsonian, and you come across the name Fergus Wilson on an 1865 document. How does that change the course of your reporting?
I didn't immediately realize what I was looking at. I did some Googling. I'm like, this is the 40 acres program. And I was thinking, but everything I knew about it was that it was a promise that was never kept. It's something that didn't happen. So to me, like that disconnect, we're like, oh, there are land titles. I don't think this is common knowledge.
So a lot of folks have heard this phrase, right? 40 acres and a mule. As you say, a lot of people thought, okay, this just never happened. And your reporting is called 40 acres and a lie.
That's real, guys. And that's the thing. Like, a lot of people thought this was a myth, right? They thought this wasn't real. They thought that Black Americans, that we were just creating this story that we didn't really have a leg to stand on when it came to the actual factuals about the 40 acres and a mule. But in reality, the thing about history is you can only try as much as you can to hide it. But if you go back and you check the archives, right? That's why I love history. I'm a big historian. But when you go back and you check all those archives, that was there. She said she came across it because she was shocked. She thought it was a lie. She thought it was just a myth about 40 acres and a mule. But it turns out it was actually real, right? And that's what's crazy, because I mean, this just backs up everything that Black Americans, especially our ancestors, had taught. And then as well, just how we feel about the government and how they, you know, leave these broken, empty promises for things that we were entitled to as Black Americans.
What's the truth behind this program? What do people not know?
What people don't know is that it wasn't just a promise that was broken. People were received land titles. We found more than 1,250 people who got land titles, men and women. They picked out their plots of land, mostly on the plantations where they were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres.
All right, guys, so peep that. Not everyone got the 40 acres, but it was available, right? It says up to, right? So that's also the verbiage that a lot of people, especially, you know, Black Americans, we always have to read the fine print, because we understand the games and the mental gymnastics that them people, the YT establishment, would create for us, right? All these loopholes and these hoops and hurdles that we would have to go through just to be able to receive the things that we were entitled to. Like I mentioned earlier, we were the ones who built all this infrastructure that America is still benefiting from today was built on the backs of enslaved Black Americans, right? So for us to feel entitled, that's real, because it was literally divvied out. Let's go back to that so you guys can really hear what she said.
Who's behind this program? What do people not know?
What people don't know is that it wasn't just a promise that was broken. People were received land titles. We found more than 1,250 people who got land titles, men and women. They picked out their plots of land, mostly on the plantations where they were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments.
Look, guys, we were on our way, okay? We were working towards this, right? We were actually putting things together. We had already had the land picked out. We had already had infrastructure, because guess what? We were the farmers. We were the construction workers. We were the ones building the streets, okay? So for us, we already had skills, very specific skills, right? And so we were already ready to go right after the Civil War, because we were the ones for, at that point, already almost 100 years sitting here, building, helping cultivate land, moving and developing all types of areas within America. We were already doing that. So when it was time for us to get our own land and build our own businesses and build our own infrastructure, we were already ready to go. And that's why it's so crazy when people try to talk down on Black Americans, saying that, you know, they didn't really know what was going on. The history has shown we were the ones who had the skill set. We were the ones who had the infrastructure. We were the ones who had the ingenuity and also the inventive mindset to be able to take things to the next level, right? Like she said, building our own towns, having our own government. Okay, listen to this again, guys. You got to hear this.
Their plots of land, mostly on the plantations where they were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments, elected a sheriff. They were living their lives, and they lived there for like up to a year and a half before they were kicked off.
They were kicked off. I want to stop you there.
Did you guys hear that? We were already there for a year and a half. People were already getting their heels dug in, cultivated land, created systems, had their own government infrastructure. And then as soon as that was, established, you already know what's going to happen. And that's why it's so important, you guys, to listen and take time with history, because this is exactly what was going on, right? When people talk about Black Americans and us getting out the mud and then everything being taken out from us at every single turn, this is exactly what that means, okay? We had already been setting up, getting ready for our own, right? Our own situation, having our own land, having our own crops, having our own infrastructures and governments within that. And then they chose to say, no, you know what? We're going to take that back. And I can guarantee you most times, like you already know, the jealousy, right? The jealousy of Black Americans being able to, as soon as we got the land, boom, being able to cultivate it, boom, being able to farm on it, boom, being able to make money. Because she said they were already creating stores, okay, to sell the crops, okay, that they were already growing. I'm going to go back. You guys got to hear this.
They were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments, elected a sheriff. They were living their lives, and they lived there for like up to a year and a half before they were kicked off.
They were kicked off. I want to stop you there so you can tell us a little bit more, and also remind people what it took you to get to the point of finding those 1,200 people that you did. You and your report.
All right, guys. So she already said that was already 1,200 Black Americans who had already been ready to cultivate the land, had already gone and made, very, very strategic, right, movement towards helping and cultivating that land. 1,200 Black Americans were already cultivating and working on this land before it was taken away from them, guys. Okay, 1,200, and like you said, for a year and a half, right? So let's go back. I want you guys to hear this, man, because this is just really important information. You got to hear this.
Common knowledge.
So a lot of folks have heard this phrase, right? 40 acres and a mule. As you say, a lot of people thought, okay, this just never happened. And your reporting is called 40 acres and a lie. What's the truth behind this program? What do people not know?
What people don't know is that it wasn't just a promise that was broken. People were received land titles. We found more than 1,250 people who got land titles, men and women. They picked out their plots of land, mostly on the plantations where they were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments, elected a sheriff. They were living their lives, and they lived there for like up to a year and a half before they were.
All right, elected a sheriff, okay, had already started cultivating the land, had already started infrastructure, had already started working and building. All right, because like I always say, Black Americans, we're builders. We are not destroyers, and we're not takers. We build. We start movements. We create infrastructure. We help one another. That is the Black American way. Everybody else, y'all do whatever y'all do. But Black Americans, we are builders. And this proves it right here. We are builders. Listen to this.
It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments, elected a sheriff. They were living their lives, and they lived there for like up to a year and a half before they were kicked off.
They were kicked off. I want to stop you there so you can tell us a little bit more, and also remind people what it took you to get to the point of finding those 1,200 people that you did. You and your reporting team, you reviewed thousands of records, you conducted hours of genealogical research, you even employed artificial intelligence to sort through the millions of documents online. You mentioned these families, and we're talking about a stretch of land in Georgia and South Carolina, we should point out. How did they get kicked off the land that the government gave them?
Basically.
See, There it is, guys. The genealogy, the records, right? That is the most important part to Black American lineage, right? Is the fact that there is history. There are records of us being here. There are records of what we have done. There are records of how we were able to build. And we're going to continue to go into that genealogy because it is available to us, right? You guys can go on ancestry.com right now, start your own family tree, and you will see your history right there. It's very easy to find.
Because Lincoln was assassinated. I mean, they had promised this land. They gave land titles. The government said, this is yours. You deserve it. You're going to keep it. But Congress needed to make those titles permanent. They had a majority in Congress who were willing to do it. But Andrew Johnson, he was the vice president. He was a white supremacist. He sided with the planters who wanted their land back, and he vetoed every effort to make those land titles permanent.
All right, guys, Andrew Johnson, who was a white supremacist, okay? This is just what it is, okay? He was a white supremacist who literally stopped Black Americans and finessed us out of the land that we had already been on for, at that point, a year and a half, okay? And that's the craziest part, is the fact that, you know, Andrew Johnson went out of his way, right, to take that away from Black Americans because, like you said, a white supremacist, he does not care, okay? He wants what he wants, and he doesn't care about Black Americans and the things that we did and the sacrifices that we made for this country. And the fact that, let's keep it real, the South lost, okay? That was a big component. A lot of people were salty about that.
So how were those families removed? They were literally forcibly removed from the land?
Some of them revolted. Some of them were pressured to sign work contracts, basically to work for their former enslaver, and some just said no way, and they left.
I want to name some of the people you uncovered here because their names have otherwise been lost to history.
That's so real, guys, is the fact that, you know, they were indentured servants to the land if they stayed, okay? A lot of people, like we know, were still a part of the slave system even after 1865 and the Civil War, okay? Because, of course, a lot of them stayed on those lands, right? A lot of them were sharecroppers. And sharecropping meaning we're sharing land, you cultivate the land, I pay you a small fee for that. But a lot of Black Americans were not getting paid for all the work and the cultivation that they were doing on said plantations across America, okay? And so once that was happening, a lot of them got finessed, okay? And like you said, revolts happened. People got ran off, people left because they saw that this land was being taken away from them after they were promised through contracts and deeds. All right, let's go back to that just real quick.
He vetoed every effort to make those land titles permanent.
So how were those families removed? They were literally forcibly removed from the land?
Some of them revolted. Some of them were pressured to sign work contracts, basically to work for their former enslaver, and some just said no way, and they left.
I want to name some of the people you uncovered here because their names have otherwise been lost to history. Fergus Wilson is one, Jim Hutchinson is another, Pompey Jackson is a third. You managed to track down some of their descendants as well. Did they know about the land and the history you're sharing with us now?
A lot of them did not. And I even spoke with one descendant who's been researching her family diligently. She lived with her great-grandmother, who was Pompey's daughter. And even she thinks his daughter didn't know. So she was amazed to hear this history.
You did a little
more research. A lot of the reality for a lot of Black Americans is, as we start to do our own genealogy, as we start to deep dive into our family history, we start to see how much land and how much things were actually in the pipeline that were a part of our families, right? Me learning about my family and our family farms in Clarksville, Texas, okay? My great-great-great-grandfather had a farm right next door to his brother, okay? And it was over, you know, a couple hundred acres between both of them. And both of those lands are no longer in our family. I bet you could figure out why. You know what I'm saying? This is what goes on, though. A lot of Black Americans, we have taken so much time to do our own genealogy and find the history, but there's still so much history out there that has been wiped away that we just do not know because they wanted to make sure that we do not know this history. Straight up.
Value of the land. This is an important part of your reporting here. 1 4-acre lot that you identified in Jacksonville, Florida, based on a sale last year, that it would today 40 acres would be worth $2.5 million there.
and land that was supposed to be allocated towards Black Americans who were actually given that land during that time, right? These were actual land grants that were given to Black Americans. And like she said, who were there already for over a year and a half before Andrew Johnson changed his freaking mind and decided to give that land back to the people who he wanted to give it back to. We know who. And so now those Black Americans had to be kicked off. They were probably killed and moved out off of land that they were entitled to after they fought for it in the Civil War. Okay. So this is really, really just, you know, crazy information.
It's not just the land that was lost here in your reporting. Tell me about what else you found.
Yeah, well, just that generational wealth that wasn't passed on. You know, this 40 acres land was all the coast. It's like expensive coastal real estate. We found gated communities, golf courses, and restaurants, incredibly valuable lands. This is wealth that was not passed on. And that's kind of what we're trying to show is the impact. This is not a history lesson only. It's the impact on people who are alive today.
This is exactly why I always try to tell people that Black Americans, our generational wealth is directly connected to the 40 acres and a mule. Directly. That's exactly what she's talking about. Okay, coastal lands. All right. This is the type of real estate that is millions and millions of dollars. Like she said, there's golf courses on that land right now. Okay. We already talked about the plenty of lands that have been taken away from Black Americans. Okay. We're going to talk about the New York land that came now Central Park. That was an entire community of Black Americans that literally was taken away from them. Okay. We already know about Rosewood. We already know about Black Wall Street. Okay. But this, right, the 40 acres and a mule, the lie, right, that they literally put on us, this can now be put to the forefront so you guys can understand. All right. This isn't a lie. And that's why it pisses me off so bad when these people come around here talking about Black Americans, you guys act so titled, blah, 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 blah. And it's literally history. Literally history. Literally. All right, let's see. Tyler Boston. Bro, do you realize they're finessing everyone's farms right now as we speak? 5 to 7 generations are having to sell all again. Brother, Mr. Tyler, let me explain to you. The farms that are being taken right now, this video proves that they didn't even belong to them in the first place. Okay, so your little argument already gets debunked. Okay, this video specifically talks about this. This video specifically talks about the land that was entitled to Black Americans way before you're talking about in 2025, fella. All right, we're talking about in 1865, bro. Okay, this land that you're talking about is being taken away from, you know, whoever has it now. That land wasn't entitled to them. And let's be clear here. If the land that was actually supposed to go to Black Americans belonged to us, do you not understand this? Like, come on, man. Come on, bro. Bro, I'm not even talking about your video. I'm saying in general, family. Mr. Boston, I want you to understand that that is a part of it, bro. We have to start at the beginning. It can't just be about the video. Like I just mentioned, the land that you are talking about that a lot of these farmers are losing was never their land to begin with. All right. Whether it belonged to Black Americans or whether it belonged to the Native Americans, it did not belong to them. This land did not belong to them and they stole it. OK, she literally talks about them stealing it. Black people did not have 100% of the farms. OK, so then who were slaves? Who was cultivating the farms before Black people were here? Come on, bro. Like, come on, dog. Like you're lost, bro. You're lost, bro. Who was working on these farms before any white Americans were, dog? It was us, Black Americans. All right. So when you're talking about who Black people didn't have 100% of the farms, bro, you don't know history. OK, and when you come on my channel, I'm going to bring facts. I'm not just going to be up here talking, bro. I brought up a whole video of this. OK, who was the ones on the farms? It was Black Americans. There was no anybody else on these lands. All right. We were the ones who were the farmers. We were the ones who were the cultivators. We were the construction workers. We were the inventors. OK, all of this was because of us. All right. Native Americans didn't teach. Native Americans are Black Americans. Catch up. Catch up. You need to catch up, Tyler, because Black Americans are the natives. When are you guys going to wake up? All right. When are you guys going to understand that Black Americans are the natives? We were here. Okay. Our lineage directly goes into that. If y'all are the inventors, why is Africa still in shambles? Because we're not African. Tyler, because we're not African. That's why. When you look around in America, why America is so great, why is everything so amazing here, and why everybody wants to come here is because of what Black Americans built. All right? So don't come on here trying to disrespect the ancestors, family. What are you talking about? The slaves were here, brother. Do your research. Those slaves came from boats and people who were already here, family. We've already talked about this, bro. Tyler Boston, I don't know what persuasion you are. I don't know what your race is, dog, but I really think you need to study history, okay? Because if that was possible, right, it wouldn't be as many Black Americans as we have, okay? So, like I said, the people who were cultivating these lands, the people who were building, the people who were the ones who were foundational to help this country become what it is today is because of foundational Black Americans, bro. And you need to do your history, all right? Native Americans are Black Americans, fam. We are one and the same, okay? So when you're talking about where did the slaves come from, they came from right here in America, brother. Okay. And then there was also some that came on boats. All right. And guess what? The colonizer, if you do genealogy, you can see I've done mine. All right. My family tree, I can trace it all the way back to the colonizer. The people who colonized my family, the people who were mixed into my family, I can look at their history and where they came from, England and Ireland. Okay. So when you're talking about this, Tyler, I think you need to do your own research, my boy. I think you need to take some time and sit with history before you go off and trying to be delusional, bro. Only white people weren't here, bro. I think there's something wrong with you, bro. I really do. Like there was so many other people that were here, dog, but it was only Black Americans. There was nobody else. All right. It was us and then the European colonizer. That's it. You talking crazy, bro. You don't even know what you're talking about.
The people who live there now, the communities that are there now, is any of this history part of what they know? Are they aware of it?
No, absolutely not. And it was very jarring for me to go to some places where there's no sign other than like the Habersham plantation gated community. That's, I guess, that sign. But as far as the 40 acres that it was given to someone and taken back, there's zero signs.
Do you have any way of calculating the full loss of generational wealth here?
That was actually one of the hardest things to do. We wanted to, because there were like 75 plantations more where this land titles were handed out, but we couldn't find maps for all these old plantations to figure out exactly where they were. So we had to just use these examples. And the examples we found, some of them were like shocking, like you said, millions of dollars for 40 acres today.
Of dollars for 40 acres today. All right, let's take a look at that map, right? Let's go back. I want to say, yeah, look at that, bro. Okay, so if you look at the map, right, from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way down the coast of Georgia, all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, so just imagine, look at that coastal real estate. Okay, this is stuff, especially in the Carolinas, that is super sought after. Okay, Georgia, look at this. This path right here is all some of the most expensive real estate in America right now. Black Americans were entitled to this. They were already on those lands. They were already cultivating it. They had already been given contracts for it. And then it was finessed and taken away from them by who? Mr. President Andrew Johnson. All right. He revoked the order. Okay. Revoked the order and had these people displaced, and that generational wealth that she's speaking about being taken out of our community. All right. So those land titles that were given to former slaves, this is what it looks like. This is what that plant, that area, all this right here, this is where it's all coming from. Okay. So look, My dad, his side of the family, right? His dad is from South Carolina. Okay. And so when I look at that, I think about that. I think about the coastal understanding, right? And how close South Carolina is to where they ended up in Illinois, right? They went all the way up north from South Carolina. Okay. So when people talk about this crazy stuff, they don't know what they're talking about. They just don't know history, y'all. And that's why I had to do this video. That's why I had to bring this to the forefront, because like I said, it was a little research and I saw that people were talking about this when this dropped last year, but I feel like it's more relevant today. This story is super relevant today because there's so many people who are walking around with false propaganda, talking down on Black Americans, acting like we are saying that we're entitled to something. How can we act that way when it was actual land titles given to former slaves? How is that entitlement when that was our land? Please help me understand that, because if this is stuff that was land titles that were given to Black Americans and it was promised to Black Americans, how can you guys tell us that we are the ones who are entitled when in reality, okay, this was stuff that was already in the hands of our ancestors. They had already started working on this. They had already started putting in work to cultivate this land. And so, yeah, to hear people talk reckless about Black Americans and the things that we've done is just absolutely insane.
So we had to just use these examples, and the examples we found, some of them were like shocking, like you said, millions of dollars for 40 acres today.
So when you speak to descendants of these families, what kind of reaction did you get? I mean, knowing about the generational wealth that was lost, about the historical injustice that transpired here, what are their reactions today?
People have had a lot of different reactions. I would say a very common one was cynicism, kind of like, yeah, of course, the government took it away. Like, of course we would be given land and my ancestors would be given land and be taken away. That was
This is just the ideology, right? This is why Black Americans have no trust for the government. This is why Black Americans do not trust any politicians, because we understand what they have done to us in our history. And that's why history is so important. You guys really need to take time and study history, because if you do not, you are failed to repeat it. And that's the point. We saw so many examples of why Black Americans have gone through the things that we have gone through, right? And I got a little list here so we can run it off just so you guys can know and understand what the plight was, right? So slavery from 1619 to 1865, Black codes from 1865 to 1866. The KKK started in 1865 and they are still out here today. Jim Crow from 1875 to 1954. Redlining from 1934 to 1968. The war on drugs, 1971 until today, okay? Mass incarceration started in 1973, still goes on today. The Three Strikes Law started in 1993, still goes on today. Gerrymandering, ongoing. ICE, okay? So when we're talking about what goes on and how long we've been dealing with this stuff, this has been going on since the 1600s. So Black Americans, knowing our enemy and understanding what is at stake, you dang right we're gonna make some noise about it. We're gonna talk about this because this is our history, and it is important that we represent our history in the right way.
just the beginning of like many hundreds of years of like injustices against the Black Americans. So a lot of people were not surprised. There were some people who were surprised to find out they were personally connected to that history, but no one was surprised that the land was taken back.
There is a sort of what now component to all this, right? Is there a way to correct a historical injustice like this?
Some people have been asking if there's any legal recourse. Everyone we spoke to, the experts said that because they weren't permanent titles, that they needed to be basically ratified by Congress, there's no legal recourse, but no one's ever like challenged a situation like this in court. However, there are people that we spoke to who think that, you know, there is a moral issue here. It's such like a glaring injustice, and there are people with names, land titles, and descendants. Like, it's not just some abstract idea, like people lost this wealth, and that maybe there's a moral claim for like reparations or something like that.
is why reparations is so important to Black Americans, right? Is because this speaks directly to that, the entitlement that Black Americans should have for reparations, right? That is something that we are entitled to because our ancestors made the ultimate sacrifice, okay? We were the ones who were actually integral in the foundation of America. And so it makes us feel some type of way when our ancestors are being disrespected, when they are not being respected for what they've done, and as well for the BS that we hear every single day, these lies about Black Americans being lazy, us not really doing what we're supposed to, us having 400 years here and never doing anything. But it's like, bro, at every single turn, we can prove that we have been sabotaged, finessed, okay, backbit, stabbed in the back, all type of stuff that done happened, killed, okay, taken out because of what we wanted to make sure was done the right way, right? And so for us, yeah, it pisses us straight off because there's no point in Black Americans doing all this work, right? All this work that we've done over generations and to just let it go because y'all don't want to address what really happened. Nah, reparations for Black Americans, reparations in the form of cash payments and land grants. That's what we're looking for because it's owed to us.
It's just a remarkable piece of reporting. I know a labor of love for you and your team, 2.5 years of work there. It's online now for anyone who wants to read the whole thing, 40 Acres and a Lie. Alexia Fernandez-Campbell, thank you so much for joining.
Shout out to Alexia, man. Thank you for that. You know what I'm saying? I just had to hop on here because this is important. I like to make sure that these stories are continuing to be a part of my channel and what I represent over here at Elite Media, right? And we're going to continue, right, to keep our foot on the gas and make sure that we are dropping the historical facts. All right. All you guys can sit up here and talk about whatever and, you know, have your semantical conversations. But on Elite Media, we bring the receipts. And that's what we do. All right. So I just want to hop on here real quick because this is a part of the growth. You know what I'm saying? We got to post every single day. We got to be on here, some sort of live videos. I got some videos dropping this weekend. So y'all be on the lookout for those. We're going to be live streaming every day until next year, man. 2026, we're going to be ramping this all the way up. You know what I'm saying? A new year, a new approach. My birthday was yesterday. So salute to everybody out there who's been showing love. All my new subscribers, man. Thank you all so much. You guys have been nothing but super supportive. It's been great to be able to connect and hear from other Black Americans just like myself. So salute to all you guys. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Make sure you like and subscribe, okay? My name's Brandon B. This is Elite Media, man. Elite live stream, doing our thing, man. So thank you all for pulling up. Salute, and I'm out. Peace.